What is up, Steelers Nation? Thank you so much for jumping on to another episode of All Steelers Talk. I'm Noah Strackbine, joined by my main man, Steven Thompson. Find us on youtube.com/All Steelers Talker. Subscribe anywhere you get your podcast. The Pittsburgh Steelers, they are through rookie minicamp. They are headed to OTA's mandatory minicamp, and eventually Latrobe for good old training camp. It was a fun 2 days down in the South Side, saw plenty of talent. They came away signing just one player, which is, I want to say, a bit surprising. We have takeaways from what we saw at UPMC Rooney Sports Complex. And then on top of that, we got to break down the big signing from the Baltimore Ravens on top of some outside linebacker help that the Steelers seem to want, but they have to go out and likely find it in a new area. It's been a lovely couple of days, rainy couple of days, but it was a good time. Did you see that we made the Steelers hype video? And how was your time at training camp? Or rookie camp, I should say.
I had a great time at rookie camp. Like you said, I mean, I was a little surprised. They only signed one guy from that class of guys that were there. I thought there was a really impressive group of players there, some guys that they could draw from. But still feel like they got a good few days of work in. I was glad to be there, and I was really excited when we saw that. Could hear your rundown of your intro to the Steelers hype video. I'm glad they, you're almost the voice of the Steelers now. It seems to be headed that way.
It was kind of crazy. Nick Faribaugh, shout out Nick Faribaugh, Steelers Now, texted me. He's like, dude, did you know you made it big time? I was like, what are you talking about? And then I watched the video. I thought I was just going to be in the background, just hanging out. I actually watched the entire video without any sound. I was like, I have no idea why he sent me this. And then multiple people started texting me the video, and I was like, there's got to be something here. And I checked it out. Crazy. Couldn't believe it. My mom thinks that's how I'm like, that's it. Like Noah made it. It doesn't get any bigger than this. I hope she knows that they didn't ask. So they were just like, here, sounds good. My fiance was immediately like, do they have to ask for that? Or could, is it, they
owe you a royalty for that? Yeah.
Yeah. I was like, I don't think that's how that works. I think they're just, be happy that you're on the video. And I am very grateful that they are fans of the show. Very grateful that they are fans of the show. The Pittsburgh Steelers walked away from camp. They signed one guy, Anthony Averett, former Baltimore Ravens cornerback, 29 years old, veteran, has 27 starts in this league. The only guy that they walked away signing. I think a bit surprising there, but a name that doesn't shock us that he is on the 90-man roster now. What excites you about Anthony Averett? And at the same time, how surprised were you that other guys did not get deals done?
Yeah, I mean, Averett was one of the guys that I was looking at particularly closely going into rookie minicamp. I mean, the experience obviously stands out. He's older. He's got a full year of starting experience and a pretty good year of starting experience at that under his belt. I mean, obviously no one else at rookie minicamp can really say that. So I was really excited about him. I was kind of curious as to how a guy like him slips between the cracks, but he has had some injury concerns. He sat out all of 2023 with an undisclosed injury, but I think you assume it's a toe injury that bothered him in 2022 as well. I'm really excited about Anthony Averett. I think he could be a really good option in the slot. I think, he could maybe even battle with Dante Jackson for some snaps on the outside. I think he's an option in a couple of different places, and you love the experience. That's something that this room doesn't have, this cornerbacks room doesn't have a ton of at the present moment. So I think he's a very good signing. I think, I'm not expecting him to be an all-pro or anything this year, but I think he could be a really solid, backup or reserve option for the Steelers at this point.
Yeah, I look at him now as the favorite, the new starting slot corner for the Steelers, somebody that they needed. I'm not going to say that he's like a definite week one starter. I don't think it closes the door on a guy like Cam Sutton or any other free agent that's out there that the Steelers might see as a good fit for the slot position. But I do think it's a better option to have than Beanie Bishop or Darius Rush. It's a guy that comes in here with experience. It's a guy that comes in here capable of starting. 2 years ago was a starter, has played in this division for a while, which I always think helps. If you could have a guy who plays in the AFC North, they understand what AFC North football is, which is a different breed of football. Like it's a different, you're going to play 6 teams or 6 games every season that is just different than the rest of the year. And to have somebody who understands that, I think actually helps, especially on the defensive side of the ball. I don't know. I don't know what my expectations are for him just yet. I look at him as a guy that I want to see at minicamp. I want to see him at training camp. I want to see him once the pads come on. At 29 years old, he's got starting experience, so that's great. But to not be on the field for as long as Anthony Everett hasn't been on the field, you have to look at him and say, there might be some question marks there. Like, how capable are you of handling guys like Stephon Diggs and those kinds of guys?
Yeah. There's a difference between a Corey Trice who
Yeah.
missed a year, but is I believe only 23, maybe only 24 going into this year, versus a guy who is going to be pushing 30 by the time this season ends. So it is definitely different. Averett's going to have to prove not just that he can stick on the field in terms of his talent, which I think he'll be able to do, but can he stay on the field health wise? Is he going to
Yep.
be able to recover from that injury and be there for them consistently? Because that was another problem last year. I mean, it wasn't just that the Steelers were, maybe not as talented as some other teams at corner, but they had corners who were dropping like flies, defensive backs that were dropping like flies. It was tough to get a full unit in there, and that's definitely not something that the Steelers want to repeat. And you look at some of the names in that secondary right now, especially in that cornerbacks room, and
Yep.
you like the talent, but you got to make sure that everyone's there for this team to be at its best.
Yeah, I could see this team going out, and maybe I'm wrong here. Maybe I'm jumping the gun. I could see this team going out and being really comfortable with Beanie Bishop being the number 2/number 3, but working his way up the depth chart while Averett and a guy like Cam Sutton are the okay, this is 1, this is 2. Like, I think that at that point, I think that's what the Steelers did is they set themselves up to have options, which is the best way to go about this. And they did it late enough that you're like, okay, look, this was crazy. I don't know how you pulled this off, but you still have an opportunity to pull this off. If they go into the season with just Averett as the starter, are you okay with that? Like, is that enough to have Averett and then Beanie Bishop?
As of right now, I'm not so sure. Like you said, we need to see what Anthony Everett can do when the pads come on.
Yeah.
I think I like his potential, but again, you got to see it. So I would not, if the season started tomorrow, I'd be pretty nervous about just throwing Anthony Everett out there and rolling with the cornerback group that they have right now. But like you said, they have options. This is, I think, ideally, Everett is a guy who's backing up, who's rotating in, who's being a reserve. It's he's I think he'll end up being a solid backup at his best, but I still think the Steelers did a good job by leaving the door open to make a bigger addition, to make an addition that looks more like a surefire starting corner right away.
Yes. I agree. I think that you have to keep the door open, but you just never know. You just never know. Like, this could be an upgrade from Chandon Sullivan, could be an upgrade from Arthur Millette. You just don't know what you're going to get in this guy. I'm excited to see what they do get in this guy. I'm excited to see what they get in Beanie Bishop, but I'm more comfortable with the Steelers being in a spot where the undrafted guy isn't your, hey, chances are he starts week 1, compared to a veteran that, even if there's question marks, at least you have another option, which is a better place to be than they were 2 or 3 days ago. We went to rookie minicamp, left rookie minicamp. I think there were plenty of takeaways. You look at this team in the 48 hours that you spent there. What were your biggest ones from a rookie class that seemingly they only brought one extra guy from, but we also got to see guys like Roman Wilson and Troy Fautanu and everybody else?
Yeah, I think my first takeaway, and I kind of start at the top of the draft class, the biggest one was, I think, Troy Fautanu playing right tackle almost exclusively. I think that's a pretty big indicator to me that they see him as a starter right away.
Yeah.
I then it like Dan Moore, it's possible, I guess, that they throw him out there at right tackle and they say, hey, if you can figure it out, you can figure it out, and you can be our starter. But I think we've talked about it this offseason. I don't really see Dan Moore as a right tackle. I don't think that is really going to be an option for him. I don't think that's where he plays his best football. So I think the fact that they are putting Fautanu there tells me they want Broderick Jones surely at left tackle, obviously, but they want it sooner rather than later. And they're going to be pretty comfortable throwing Fautanu out there to be a starter week 1. He's, I think they're just looking at it from a talent perspective. They're going to live with some growing pains maybe for a guy who's flipping over to a different side from where he played most of his last college season. And they're just looking at the talent saying, we can't afford to keep this guy off the field. We need him in a spot to start immediately.
Yeah, I thought Fautanu playing the right side actually, it encouraged me, just like you said, because I like to see that they have options. I like to see that the Steelers are looking at this and saying, we want to make sure that we're not just going to assume that Fautanu is the left tackle and Broderick Jones is the right tackle. We're going to look at this and say, we'll see who's the best at both positions, and then we'll fill that out. And I think that's the way to go about it, is make sure that you have the best five out there and the best five positions that they play. And maybe that's Fautanu playing the right side. Maybe it's him playing the left side, but at least they're going to prepare for him to do both, which I think is big. Like I don't look at the Steelers as a team who should be locked into a certain starting lineup. I think that they should be open when it comes to their right and left tackle. And I think Fautanu playing the right side definitely encouraged me. I have two of them. My first one is I thought Jonathan Ward was a lock to make this 90-man roster. Like I thought he was a lock to come in here and get signed to a one-year deal. And maybe that still happens. I mean, it's only Monday. Rookie camp ended yesterday. So maybe they ink him to a deal this afternoon, but I find it hard to believe that the Steelers are going to continue to look through this class for longer than 24 hours or so. I think at some point they're just going to close the door and say, okay, that's it. That's our guys. That's our 90-man team. Here we go. I thought he was a lock. He looked really good during, I guess, walkthroughs, individual drills during those times. Eddie Faulkner continued to compliment him. I mean, he talked about his old man hands and how that's a good thing and how much power he has. And, I said to you a couple of times, I thought he was Edwards out of Georgia. And I was like, man, dude, this kid looks really good. And then I realized it wasn't him. And I was like, oh man, Jonathan Ward actually looks really good. Thought he was a lock to make the 90-man roster. I thought he was a guy that could compete to make the team at 26 years old. And then my other one was Roman Wilson. I thought Roman Wilson looks really good. I think that there was never a moment where you heard a wide receiver coach kind of telling him, hey, you got to do this different or you're doing this wrong. It was all just like, hey, great job, Roman. Great job. Way to do that correctly, Roman. I thought he looked really, really good. I thought he looked the part of a guy who's coming in here and ready to showcase how much of an impact he could actually make.
Yeah, I think to go back to your first point, I mean the thing about Ward, like, do they have enough running backs, to go into training camp? Like, because I believe they only have 4 under contract right now, going into going into OTAs. I believe it's just or maybe only 3, right? Because it's Warren, Harrison, and Edwards now that they just signed him. Like, do you think they're still going to add to the running backs room? Like, why not? If they're still going to add, why not add Ward?
So I agree with you. They also have Aaron Shapkin, which
how could I forget that?
Yeah, I don't know who that is, to be honest with you. So they technically have 5, I guess, but still, like last year, the way I looked at it, and I still think that they're going to add because, I mean, last year Najee Harris took about 7 snaps during training camp, and I don't expect him to take more this year. I expect Jaylen Warren to also be on a snap count during training camp because, I mean, they're not going to continue to just run him into the ground, especially if their long-term plan is to see if he's a starting running back. So I think both of those guys are going to be very limited during training camp. I have a hard time believing that they could just go through it with the 3 guys that they have behind them. Maybe they really feel good about Edwards, but I don't know. I thought for certain that they'd add Jonathan Ward just to make sure that they had enough depth.
Yeah. And because I'm going to say last year, I mean, I guess there were times where we were meeting a new running back at training camp every week. There were guys were rotating in and out. So maybe they still do that, but I feel like they had something good in Jonathan Ward right there. It was a little confusing as to why they didn't just take what they had right in front of them to add to that depth, because I feel like they're still going to have to pick some guys up before training camp actually starts.
Yeah. They definitely are. Like, there's no way that they could go into training camp with that. And I don't know how many guys are on their 90-man team right now, but again, I have a very hard time believing that Najee is going to take more of a workload than he took last year at training camp, and Jalen is going to take the same workload. I expect him to take much less. And Cordero Patterson is 32 years old. Like, you're not going to look at him and say, all right, dude, you're the guy. You're taking, 40, 50 reps a day. That's just not going to happen. So I think you're going to need younger guys. To a degree, you're going to want to get these guys to mesh with the new offensive line and a new offensive coordinator and a new quarterback and all that stuff. But I still think you could do that without any live physical reps. And I think they need bodies, and they need good ones. And I thought Jonathan Ward, I mean, he's got experience playing in the NFL. He plays special teams. He could return kicks and punts. I thought he was an option. I'm surprised that he didn't make it. But again, maybe if he doesn't get signed somewhere else, he comes here in a month. You just never know. Maybe by the end of the day he's inked. Who knows? But I was shocked. I thought he would have been right there with Everett, who got signed immediately.
Yeah, I would have too. And to your other point, I mean, I completely agree about Roman Wilson. I mean, that guy looks. I don't want to say ready to go, but
Yeah.
he looks smooth, like technically sound. I'm eager to see him, catch some passes. Eager to see how that kind of relationship with the other quarterbacks has grown or will continue to grow, or how he looks, actually repping with them. But I think from like a route running perspective, from a speed perspective, that guy I think has all the tools that he's going to need to be successful in this offense. And again, it all comes with a grain of salt that you got to see guys in pads. But I'm not any less excited about Roman Wilson. I'm not any less confident that he's they're probably their wide receiver too at this point in the season right now.
Yeah, I agree. I think I'm more confident right now. I was a little worried about what I was going to see, and don't get me wrong, like there wasn't a moment where I was like, oh my gosh, Roman Wilson is a ridiculous talent. There just wasn't that there, but it was good to see that there were no hiccups. It wasn't a starting line further back than I expected it to be. So that's a very positive sign if you're the Pittsburgh Steelers. And I think right now, if they're freaking out, which I think they still want a wide receiver, but if they end up with Roman Wilson as their two, feeling good about it, I think that they're in a spot where it doesn't really, really hurt them. All right, next thing I want to talk about here, the Steelers were reportedly talking and very close to signing former outside linebacker Bud Dupree, who ends up with the Los Angeles Chargers on a 2-year deal. Was not surprised that he didn't sign in Pittsburgh. I thought a guy who's coming off 6.5 sacks, 10 sacks over the last 2 seasons, still only 31 years old, could play quality reps, and who started 16 of 17 games last season, wasn't going to come and be a fourth outside linebacker for the Pittsburgh Steelers. That being said, when Jeremy Fowler says that they were very close on inking a deal together, you got to believe that they were very close to finalizing something and bringing him back to the city of Pittsburgh. And that seems to be every season. The Steelers, okay, Bud Dupree's on the market. Let's just talk to Bud Dupree and see if it works out. Doesn't happen. But it clearly indicates that the Pittsburgh Steelers want an outside linebacker and that they are looking for somebody to come in here and fill a role and, be that number 4. But, the way that they operated last season was all 4 of those guys contributed. So I would imagine all 4 of them contribute this year as well. Marcus Golden seems to be the next name on that list. Is he an option for you? Is he the guy that the Steelers should go out and sign? Do you think he's got any interest in re-signing with the Pittsburgh Steelers?
I think the Steelers would absolutely be interested in him. I think he was really good in a limited role last year, and I think you bring him back to do the same job, and I think you'd be really happy with that, especially, even if you consider that, you assume Nick Herbig's going to take a step forward this year and be better than he was last year and play some more snaps. I think you would be absolutely comfortable with, Marcus Golden coming back and playing literally the exact same role on a cheap deal. Just come in and be like a pass rush specialist when someone needs a blow or whatever, and you feel really, really good. It's also, I think injury insurance, because Marcus Golden is, and we talked about this last year, I think he's still a guy who could start on an NFL roster. Like there's not a team out there that or I don't think it's if there are 32 starting jobs out there at whatever one defensive end spot or one edge rusher spot, I think Marcus Golden could fill one of those really competently. Is he a top end starter? Probably not. But if that's a guy that you can put on your bench, if you can stockpile him, if you can keep him fresh as an older guy and just say, hey, we're only using you in spots, but we need your absolute best at those spots, I think that's a perfect situation both for him and for the Steelers. I don't know if he would get crazy interest from somewhere else. So I think he'd be on a cheap deal too. I think he'd make a lot of sense to bring back for the Steelers. And I was a little surprised, I guess, that they didn't do it earlier. Maybe they just assumed that Nick Herbig is going to take that much of a step forward. But clearly, if they want one more guy, I don't know why Golden wouldn't be one of the first guys that they contacted.
Yeah, I think Golden makes a ton of sense for the Pittsburgh Steelers. I think he's exactly what they're looking for as an edge rusher for. Again, I mean, maybe he does get interest from other teams and has a better role. And if that's the case, if I'm Marcus Golden, I think that I'm better than an outside linebacker for. So there's no need to re-sign with the Pittsburgh Steelers as an outside linebacker for. I still think he plays a decent bit of reps, but I don't know. I just don't know how sold he is on coming back to Pittsburgh. I think the Steelers would love him. I mean, everybody talked about how much they loved Marcus Golden last year. Everybody was a big fan of what he brought to the locker room and his leadership as a veteran, the way he helped Nick Herbig, the way he helped Alex Highsmith and TJ Watt. Like, he was just a guy that was a natural leader amongst that group of guys. And I think that they would warmly welcome him back to that locker room. I think they'd be big fans of him. At the same time, I don't know where they stand. I think that at this point, when we go to OTAs and minicamp, we're going to be surprised because I think DeMarvin Leal is going to be playing edge rusher. I think that they're going to test him out on the outside. I don't think he's got the frame to play outside, but I also don't think he's got the frame to play inside. And I think they're just trying to find a place for him. And I think they're going to test him out on the outside and say, okay, cool, this is good enough. Like, we'll see if he's outside linebacker for quality. He's a better pass rusher than he is a run stuffer. So he kind of fits that same role, and maybe he gets a handful of snaps. I think as a year 3 guy, you're just trying to see what works for him. But I think that's their plan right now. I do think they want to add to that group. I think Bud Dupree would have been a great addition. I think Marcus Golden could be a good addition. If neither of them work out, I could see a guy like DeMarvin Leal trying to play that role. I don't know if it works out, but at least it gives him a spot on the roster.
Yeah, I was gonna say, this that just feels like really reaching for, trying to shoehorn DeMarvin Leal into a spot. You're just trying to find him a position for the sake of finding him a position,
Yeah.
which I don't know if I'm a huge fan of. It looked like this guy just hasn't worked out. Like I don't think there have even really been great flashes from DeMarvin Leal like that
No.
indicate to you, yeah, this guy's got some potential. He could become something. And even if Marcus Golden was making $1.3 million last year, even assuming that he gets a little bit of a pay bump on the open market, what is that? $2.5 million, something like that. Like, it's
Yeah.
still probably less than three. If you're asking me, do I sign Marcus Golden, or do I, go hunting for a position for DeMarvin Leal? Do I try to make something happen for him? I feel like I'm going Marcus Golden every time. I mean, maybe
Yeah.
I've given up on the DeMarvin Leal experiment too early, but I just don't see the use in giving a guy who hasn't really shown you much over 3 years another chance to show you something that he just really hasn't done at all during his career.
Yeah, I think DeMarvin Leal was a guy set up to lose in the first place. Like, when they drafted
Yeah.
DeMarvin Leal, I looked at it and said that he doesn't play in a 3-4 defense. Like, I don't know why you're even trying. Like, he's not an outside linebacker. He's not an edge rusher. He's not a defensive tackle. He's a defensive end. He's a Myles Garrett. He's a I don't know. I guess you could call him a Joey Bosa. He's those types of guys. He's a Max Crosby. Like, that's who he plays. He doesn't play. He's not a TJ Watt. He's not a Cam Hayward. He's right in the middle of both of those things. And if you put him in Cleveland's defense, I bet you he works out much better than he does in Pittsburgh's. And I think that they thought, like, hey, who cares? Like, we could just turn him into something. It could work out, whatever. But he didn't come from that in college. He didn't play the inside in college. I mean, he tried. He did once in a while. He played the inside in college, but he was mostly just like that defensive end role. And again, that works out well in a lot of defenses. I don't think it ever had a shot to work out in Pittsburgh. And I think they're going to test him out at outside linebacker, see if it works out, see if they could get him to do something. But he's have to probably drop like 20 pounds and gain a little bit of speed. That's not going to work. You're already 3 years in. I don't have high hopes for it, but I think that's what I expect the Pittsburgh Steelers to do, is to give him an opportunity and see if it works. And then from there, like, I think Bud Dupree is there, like, okay, look, at Bud's on the market. He's gaining traction. He's got interest from other teams. We're going to talk to Bud Dupree and see if it works, because it's Bud Dupree and we have a relationship with them, and we think that this could be a good home for him, just like we thought it could be a good home for him for the past couple of years. And it didn't work out. And now they're looking at it going, okay, what's option 2? And I think option 2 is testing out DeMarvin Leal, and then you go from there with a Marcus Golden, or I don't know. I don't know who else is on the open market, but I would imagine there's at least somebody.
Yeah. I mean, they're like the Lawsons, Carl, and Shaq that I guess could be options too. It's, obviously at this point in the offseason, it tends to be pretty thin, but I guess that's my next question is, like, how long do you wait to test out that DeMarvin Leal option? Do you wait until training camp? Because I don't know, there might not be options if that doesn't work out, like Golden could be signed by then. How much are you going to learn in OTAs about what Leal can do at that position, I'm just not sure.
I think you go into training camp. I think they're going to go into training camp. I don't know if I'd handle it the same way, but I think if I had to predict how this is going to turn out, I think that they go into training camp. They see if he's the guy, much like they did Marcus Robinson last year. Is Marcus Robinson good enough to be inside linebacker 3? Is he the guy that's going to come in here behind a Landon Roberts, behind Cole Holcomb, and be that guy? And if he's not, then they're going to go get a Quan Alexander. And I think they're going to look at it and say the same thing about DeMarvin Leal. Is he good enough to be a contributor for 15 snaps a game? If he is, cool. If he's not, okay, we're going to go get if Marcus Golden is still out there, Marcus Golden. And I don't know who else would still be out there. And, Carl Lawson's a name that Mike Tomlin loves. Carl Lawson. But I don't know if he fits it either. Like, he doesn't play that same position as well. I think he plays it much better than DeMarvin Leal does, and I think he could adjust better than DeMarvin Leal does. But again, I don't know. But still, that could be a name. You could go out and find somebody. You could go out there and get anybody who's just like, okay, cool, sounds good. You're an upgrade. You're a veteran. You could adjust. That's good enough. We feel confident in this. But if I had to say how I expect it to go down, I expect DeMarvin Leal to get a shot in training camp, and then they kind of take it from there.
Yeah, I think you're right. But I also, that would not be how I would approach this, to be quite honest. That feels like a very, I don't know, it feels kind of like I guess not the linebacker situation from last year, more closer to years past. But like, I think we talked about this maybe last week, where the Steelers make a lot of moves where it's like, oh, this is good enough, And
Yes.
I worry about the depth if TJ Watt's got a couple bad injuries over the past couple of years. It hasn't always kept him out for terribly long periods, but he has had to miss some time, and I worry about a situation where, it's like the inside linebackers last year, where you're down to trusting Mark Robinson a lot more than you would want to because of injuries, and you didn't really seem to have that great of a backup plan going into the season to begin with. So I think you just got to be, at least in my opinion, more prepared than that, and I don't know if DeMarvin Leal counts as being as prepared.
No, I don't think it does either. And I think that they saw what 4 outside linebackers does last year. Like, I think they saw that and they said, "Oh, this is nice. This is good depth. This is guys that we could rely on week in and week out. This keeps TJ fresh and Alex Highsmith fresh." And I think they saw the benefits of it. Again, I don't know that they have the options. I think that I don't know what their plan was. Like, I thought that they would have had somebody by now, but maybe they don't. Maybe they want to see. Maybe they fully trust Nick Herbig to just be the guy. They don't need a fourth. Who cares about a fourth? But again, just like you said, somebody goes down. You're in a situation where you wish you had that fourth, and I think the Steelers could find themselves in it. But again, that's where they stand right now, and I don't expect anything to change by the time we talk on Wednesday, or by the time we go to minicamp, or by the time we head to Latrobe. I just think in that amount of time, they're going to see what they got and the guys that they have, and that's where they stand. And to be honest with you, I could also see them, kind of testing out Logan Lee on the outside. Okay. I don't know if that works out either, but at least he's an Iowa dude. Iowa dudes tend to work out in Pittsburgh's defense, and I think that maybe, but I don't. Again, I think that comes after DeMarvin Leal, and I don't think it's a good option for the Steelers whatsoever.
Yeah, I'm not super sold on it at all. Logan Lee's interesting. He's another, but he's also like, that feels sort of like Leal, where they were like, oh, he has versatility. He can play anywhere on the line, and that does worry me sometimes when a rookie shows up and they don't really seem to have a position.
No, exactly. Everybody needs a position, and like, it just like you said, never seems to work out when you don't, and you don't want to toss those guys in there. Again, I think Iowa's defense matches a lot more than Texas A&M's did, but I still don't know if I'm bumping them outside and then thinning your depth on the inside to kind of make that move. Don't feel good about it, but we'll see what happens. With that said, we're going to head out of here, guys. Thank you so much for jumping on to another episode of All Steelers Talk. Make sure to subscribe to us on YouTube, youtube.com/All Steelers Talk. Check us out anywhere you get your podcast. And as we've been saying, please go subscribe to our new YouTube channel, youtube.com/All Steelers Talk clips. We will be back tomorrow. Enjoy another beautiful day in the Berg. Peace.